ready to build resiliency, create a healthy lifestyle, and overcome adversity with a warrior mindset. This is Define the Fight with Mariah Prussia.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back on this beautiful Monday morning. I'm going to roll with it. We don't have snow on the ground. It's not raining, so life is good. My guest coming up here, I tell you what, we talk about adversity. We talk about being invincible in choices that we lead through. Either we sit in that space or we put our foot on the accelerator. And I had the opportunity to interview Kacey however many years ago and learn more about his story and how he literally walks through life on his hands. So rising up with Kacey, Kacey McCallister is joining me today, and he is a motivational speaker, but so much more. Kacey, it's been a few years. Hey, how's it going today?
It's going great. You know, life takes some crazy turns, but, you know, I guess that's what it's all about. It's about figuring those turns out and moving forward anyway.
That's exactly it. Now, you've done so many different things with Spartan races, marathons, you name it. We're going to dive into that. But first, I want to lead back to your childhood and how everything really led you to where you're at right now. So most people don't recognize the fact that because you're sitting in a car, the fact that you're a double leg amputee. So let's talk about that story. And I remember you talking about your parents and the doctor. I really just want to dive into that because right now, individuals can get stuck in that space of I just can't do it or my life is so heavy. But again, that comes down to perspective and shifting that self-sabotaging mindset into leading forward. So let's talk about, Kacey, a little bit about yourself, and then let's talk about where you started off and where you're at now.
Yeah, well, when I was 6 years old, we were, visiting relatives, and after church service was over, we were standing, on the edge of a highway waiting to cross. And, like any 6-year-old, I wanted to be done, go with the cousins and play. And so my mom said, there's 2 cars coming in a truck. Well, I took off after those 2 cars went by. And unfortunately, the truck that I didn't see was a semi truck. And unfortunately, it caught my legs and rolled me beneath the wheels. And when the truck stopped, I was missing one leg, and the other one had to be amputated later. So, at a very early age, 6 years old, in fact, it was a miracle I even survived the accident. But I did lose both of my legs. But like you said, it was pretty amazing when I was, when they fixed me up, patched me up, when I was about to leave the hospital, when my life was really taking another path. The doctors told my parents, in fact, it's kind of weird to think about, but they actually told my parents not to do stuff for me, which sounds kind of weird. You got the little 6-year-old who, is pretty dependent on parents anyway, but now a 6-year-old without legs, and the doctors are making a clear statement that this kid, regardless of what he just went through, still has a lot of value. And if you do things for him, he's never going to know what he can achieve in life. And so my parents very clearly took the path of, let's make sure that Kacey can do absolutely anything he wants to in life. And that's exactly what they did.
I think, how many years was that ago, Kacey?
Oh man, you're gonna.
I'm aging you right now.
Huh? Yeah, that's 30 coming up on 31 years this December.
So you look at the advice that the doctors gave 31 years ago. Don't help your child. Let him prove he still has value, right? So allow him. Don't enable him. Allow him to do those things, right? To learn how to do things differently. Whereas now, we're looking at a different beaten path where it's, okay, help them, enabling, right? So it's amazing on how it happened 31 years ago. The story might have been a little bit different in regards to how the doctors may have spoken to your parents. Fair? Yeah,
absolutely. In fact, I look at kind of the advice that's going around the our culture today. And, I'm afraid of what's happening to the kids that are going through trauma like I went through, and the advice they're getting. One girl that I worked with doing wheelchair racing, she hadn't even washed her own laundry until she was 16 years old, where she saw one of my videos and she goes, well, I can do that. I mean, I can figure out how to wash laundry. And so, back then, my parents took that stance to the point that I couldn't even ask people to turn on a light switch. My dad says, no, he's got to figure that one out. I have this great picture of the day we got out of the hospital. This little tiny 6-year-old who had just lost his leg and legs in a little tiny, 6-year-old wheelchair doing a race, around a very hilly area. And my dad is right there beside me. He's not behind me. He's not pushing me. He's there, but he's right there beside me. Like you said, it's not enabling. He's not, providing me everything I need, but he's right there supporting me every step of the way.
And the story, again, it could have been shifted where if he had assisted you, would your drive or would your mission be as strong as it is today? So you ended up going through a lot of different things. So your parents didn't. So what were some of the things that you had to do at age 6, okay, where your parents started to push you? What did you find challenges in when you're trying to learn a different way to move, to do things? What was that like? Because at 6 years old, usually, like you said, parents are a little bit more coddling. They're doing things for their children. What did you find when you shifted back without legs? What were some of those key challenge points for you?
Well, like with every challenge in life, there was a lot of learning opportunity. My mom, obviously wanting to protect her child, she had a long time adjusting to it, and it was hard on her. I'm sure it was hard on my dad too, but us guys, we don't talk nearly as much. But eventually we started figuring out how to make it work. One of the funnest stories for me, because it just shows, my redhead stubborn streak, is when it came to the bus. The short bus, the handicap bus, would pull up and pick me up, drop me off. Well, one day, being a silly little kid, I would play the boneless game where act all silly and droop all over the place. Well, apparently they thought I needed the harness, to keep me upright. Well, of course, that embarrassed me, because I was being raised as an independent, confident little kid, and that embarrassed me. I got mad and said, "Well, Mom, I'm going to get to school on my own." Now you have to understand, this was Wyoming in the middle of winter. It was snow drifts. It was icy. It was near below freezing, and so the next morning I got up and I pushed a half mile to school while the special bus sat there and waited for me. And so, it was little things like that me and my parents, there was fights. There was no, you're going to figure it out. There was my mom telling me to wear my fake legs. So there was a lot of growing pains, and there was a lot of trials. But when it came out of it, I was figuring out how to be independent, and I was figuring out how to overcome those challenges, one day at a time.
You also played a lot of different sports in, elementary school, going into high school, which clearly would have different challenges and potentially different looks, right, that were coming your way, or potential people voicing, how does this guy do it, or vice versa, why is he doing it? Well, we're going to go, when we go into a break, I want to come back because I know this is going to be I want you to break down the different stories and the different sports that you played because, you have competed, like I had mentioned, in Spartan races, in marathons, in so many things. And, we all train differently, and we're so used to training with, our full body, right? Legs, arms, so on and so forth. And I can't even fathom, what that would be like to do everything on your knuckles or on your palms and the different ways that your body is taking impact. Because you think of, if it's palms, it's all in your wrists, your shoulders, or vice versa. When you start going on your knuckles, there's different wear and tear that most people haven't experienced because they're not walking on their hands. They're walking on their 2 feet. And it just goes to show that in life, sometimes you got to crawl. And sometimes you have to move differently to make sure that you're able to take that next step. And it might not be easy, but it's going to be worth it. So
yeah, absolutely. My life has been a whole series of figuring out how to do it a totally different way. And often even my coaches have no clue how to help me get there.
Well, that's what it's all about, right? Sometimes we need that adversity in life so that we know how to adjust, because otherwise we're just going in cruise control again, staying in that same lane. Sometimes we have to step out of the lane so that we learn, and it's all about the lessons. So Kacey, we spoke about the fact of different sports, different things that you've clearly entailed in the present, but then also in the past. Let's talk about some different things that you faced. All right, moving forward through high school, there's a lot of different sports that you played that led you into more of the extreme races. What were some of those experiences like that you had in high school with sports?
Well, it was pretty incredible because before high school, I was still figuring stuff out. And actually, I started running into the, the people that wouldn't let me participate in sports, that were claiming that a guy in a wheelchair or a guy without legs, really couldn't participate. So I hit high school, and the first sport that was available was cross country, that fall sport. And the previous year, I wasn't allowed. I tried, because I was brought up with that attitude of, if it's hard, then it's probably the right thing to do. Let's challenge ourselves. And in high school, they finally let me do cross country. So I went into it with the attitude, it's going to be fun. I'm going to work hard. But what I really didn't realize was I was going to be awful at it. I was going to be really slow. I knew how to work hard, but, a wheelchair trying to go cross country was definitely not, it's not what people do. And so when I started going into that, I realized, I kind of had a choice to make. I could choose to continue and figure out how to overcome, the seeming impossible. When you think of wheelchairs, it's definitely not in the mud and tiny little trails that cross country is. And so I really had to persevere and figure out what I was doing. And I decided the hard route and kept with it year after year until my senior year. I had worked hard enough. Not only was I a pretty decent cross country athlete, but I absolutely ended up winning the district cross country meet. And that's kind of how all of my athletics went. And I'm really grateful that I really wasn't naturally good at any of these sports that I did, because it allowed me to build who I was. In fact, when I started wrestling, it's kind of funny to talk to my coaches now and say, hey, how was it coaching me? And, back then they didn't let on that they had no clue what they were doing. But now they say, Kacey, I had no clue how to coach a kid without legs. So often I'd show you a wrestling move and you'd go, yeah, well, you're on your knees. That's not going to work. And one of my favorite coaches, Tony Olive, he would go, you're right, figure it out. And then he'd walk away and coach someone else. So, it was awesome being provided with the tools, but at the same time, I had to fight for everything I got. I had to learn, I had to grow, I had to coach myself in a lot of respects because people weren't ready. People don't know how to coach somebody without legs.
Well, out of curiosity, with wrestling, there's points when it comes to takedowns. So how did that work when individuals are wrestling against you, knowing that you don't have legs? Were they, was it just taking down the upper body? How did you work through that? I'm curious with, fighting in the past and takedowns, so on and so forth. I'm picturing this and I'm like, how does this all work?
It was really interesting. I mean, obviously, as soon as they get behind me, they get the takedown. And as I went through my career, the first few years, I really wasn't good. I think I won maybe one match the first year I wrestled. And at that time, parents were like, oh, poor little legless kid. But by the time I was, sophomore, junior, senior, not only was I going to state, but I was winning matches at state, and then the coaches and parents go, is this fair? Is it fair to have a legless guy wrestle? And so throughout the career, it really was interesting to see the shift from, is it fair for him to, is it fair for everybody else? But just like everything else in life, there's going to be those strengths and weaknesses. I was never fast. I was wrestling these 103 pounders. So I was slow compared to them, but, then I had the muscles of a 180 pounder. So there was definitely
So we had a little No, it's all good. So we had a little break here. Casey had a little issue with his internet. So we're just, the thing is, when I look at fighting and I look at the fact of an individual who clearly has a double leg amputee, the key thing is understanding that he literally, where he's amputated is literally in a lower spot or higher spot. So it's just below the hip. So he is literally sitting on his hips when he's doing any type of sporting activity. And he, again, looks at the fact of being a warrior. He drives hard. He pushes hard. And the fact that he is navigating through so many different things in life, not only from what individuals are saying, but what people are seeing, and the fact that he is making those adjustments as he goes. And what I love about Kacey is the fact that challenges wake him up. They excite him. It makes him really want to persevere through the day, where it's like, okay, what is next? Coming off of wrestling and talking about cross country, clearly all of that led you into a different type of warrior mindset of like, I want something more. Let's dive into the different things of what pushed you to do. I believe you did marathons too, didn't you, Kacey?
Oh yeah, I've done quite a few of those. Those are a lot of fun.
So with marathons and the Spartan race, what were the key things that led you to, hey, I'm going to dive into this because you know what? I want some more. What was the training like? And then what was the key point that tipped the hat of, registering?
Well, like you said, it was building that warrior mindset. I went straight from high school, doing wrestling, cross country, track. I got into a college that had wheelchair racing. And so I started doing that and found marathons and absolutely fell in love, because it's pushing yourself as hard as you can, not just for a short little 6-minute wrestling match, but for hours at a time. So I absolutely fell in love, with pushing myself harder and faster than I could, and so through the years, as I was training marathons and, I started, not that I got bored, but I was looking for more of a challenge. You can only, you can go faster and faster in a marathon, but, after you do a few, you're going to finish. And so I was looking for something that would be impossible. My whole life, people have told me what a legless guy can and can't do. Well, I was looking for something that, that might break me. I was looking for a challenge that literally might be impossible. And like you said, for a while, I got into triathlons and that was fun. But, after doing, a half Ironman and planning on an Ironman, you're like, that didn't break me. I know I can finish it. Let's find the impossible. And that's when I saw the Spartan race, and my first thought with that Spartan race, if you're not familiar with a Spartan race, you take basically extreme trail climbing, throw a bunch of military obstacles in there, and usually in the worst weather, either heat or rain you can imagine. And that's kind of what a Spartan race is. And so I saw these races and I'm like, there's no way a guy in a wheelchair or a guy without legs is going to be able to do that challenge. And I was like, that's impossible. And I said that to myself, which looking back is kind of funny. But after watching the video a few more times, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I signed up for the race, scared out of my mind. Why the heck? Why would I sign up for a race like this when I know I probably won't be able to do it? But I went and did it. I went and got at the start line and just started going. I think that first race took me 5 hours to complete a little 3-mile race, but at the end of it, I knew that I could finish that race. I knew that I could complete it. And that led me to a longer race and more training and eventually completing some of the hardest Spartan races that they have on the planet.
So how did your body fend with that? Okay, because clearly I'm sitting here. I know how I train, but how is your training regimen different than individuals who have both of their legs? I mean, yeah, we keep circling back to that, but it is different, right? So how do you overcome those challenges, or how, when you are overusing literally the same muscle groups over and over and over again? I mean, are there different injuries that you've taken on, and what is the recovery for all of those things? So how do you train for a long race like that, clearly, yes, there's running, there's the obstacles, but what was the shift, or what different implications did you have to bring into that for you to be ready for the race?
Up until this point in my life, I really enjoyed the long distance kind of training. I'd hop in a race wheelchair. I mean, I remember doing 40 miles in a training session, doing 30 miles in hill repeats. And that was fun to me. But the moment I started training for Spartan, I really started defining what the grind was like. Because you're right, for me, running in a race wheelchair was comparatively easy. The second I started going on my hands, it got really difficult. I mean, my shoulders, had to bear repeated, movements and holding. Basically, I was doing a mini push-up every time I would scoop my body because I had to lift my entire body up. Whereas runners can kind of just swing their legs through, I had to pick my entire body up. And so honestly, it required a lot of just a lot of scooting, a lot of getting my body used to that repeated beating. And it took a long, long time. In fact, just getting older, I'm 37 now, having 5 kids, having to provide for my family. It's getting harder and harder every year to do the same exact thing. And so, I used to think that, once you had an idea, once you knew how to train for something, then you'd be good to go. But the longer I live, the more I realize that my hands are going to have issues. My shoulders are having issues. It's everything. So I'd like to say I have the perfect training regimen, but the older I get, the more I have to worry about recovery. The more I have to worry about, how fast my body is going to be able to progress and how long it needs to recover, which when I'm in my 20s, I didn't think about recovery at all.
Well, you're 37. I'm still going to call you a spring chicken because I'm almost 47. So we're just going to roll with that. But I do understand how the body shifts. And I noticed probably in the last couple of years on how my body it's not recovering the same way, or you're finding more aches and pains in what you've had, when you're in your 30s or 20s, so on and so forth. Are you currently still doing and actively pursuing racing?
I am. Last year I had maybe a half dozen races in which I did a beast in Montana that I hadn't completed, that I'd failed the year before. So I wanted to make sure I completed that one. My life has taken a few twists and turns, so I'm not in my peak racing shape for sure. But one of my goals is to do an ultra Spartan, which is it's about 30 miles. It's it's longer than a marathon. And honestly, that scares me, and I know I have a long way to go to be ready for that. But yeah, I'm always, I found the longer I go without training, the worse it is for my body. So I'm facing new challenges in my training now. But yeah, it is still always on my radar, and always working towards that goal.
So out of curiosity, I know that there's, as our life pivots, there's different chapters within our life where I know, like, prime example, I was training 3 to 5 hours a day when I was training for fights, right? So fight camps are 6 weeks long, and, granted, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, wrestling, so on and so forth, all those different pieces of the puzzle. Now, have you noticed in your fight, like mentally, that the fight is a little bit different because you have more responsibilities? So you're talking about having 5 kids, your family, your wife, work, so on and so forth. Is it harder for you to make that time where the level of commitment may have pivoted a little bit? I'm curious, for my own well-being, because I know some of the things in my life have slightly shifted. And I know it's okay, well, it's the grind of life. It's a grind of things where you're in so much acts of service that sometimes the acts of service to self start to shift slightly. Have you found that in your own personal life?
Absolutely. And that's one thing I'm kind of realizing, later in life, as I progress through life. And I kind of love your show, Define the Fight, because my fight used to be the grind, and not to mention some of the big influencers right now in that fighting mentality. but I think sometimes they miss the mark because these are men and women, that are later in life and they're still just, like you said, putting in 4, 6, 8 hours a day. And I kind of I wonder where their balance is. Obviously all of us have, times where we're relaxing, where maybe we watch one too many, shows or TikToks than we should, where we could be more productive. But as and I'm doing jujitsu as well, and trying to manage my time. And the more and more I find, like, when do I sleep? When do I have time to eat healthy? When do I have time to spend those meaningful moments with my kids? And the more I do it, the more I realize, I'm sacrificing myself in one way or another. And I love to define the fight because my definition of the fight is changing. What's my goal in doing these races? Is it, for self, having people praise me for doing the races? Is that my goal? Is it to inspire people, or is it more about my kids? Is it to inspire my kids and through my speaking business provide for my kids? And so, yeah, the fight has changed. Not to say I'm not going to continue the fight, but I can't put 6, 8, 10 hours a day into training anymore.
I love how you spoke about just it's changed, it's shifted, and who is the fight for? It's important for each and every one of us to do a life inventory on what we want in life. And sometimes we have to shift our structure. So if we talk about our why being our children, and clearly our hours are limited and they're shifted in other places in our life and very little is left for our kids, then is our why actually our children? So again, when it comes to putting in time for the races, is the race for yourself where it's like, okay, I did it. We're always trying to climb that ladder or climb that mountain, which isn't bad, but we just really have to look at why are we trying to climb so high on this mountain? And I've used this analogy before, is that as we continue to climb that mountain, if we say that we're at the top of our game, we're at a 10, the reality is that once you get to the top of the mountain, you can turn and look left, you can look right. But the reality is there's always going to be another mountain to climb where it's a false summit. So then the climb continues on. At what point do we actually stand and observe what we've climbed for and why we've done it? And, it's not about the accolades. Everybody wants affirmation, right? Because we need that. Our ego needs affirmation, right? For the most part, it needs to be fed a little bit. But we don't want it to be only fueled by affirmations. We need that because we want to push, we want to reach people and motivate others. But then at the same point too, hold on a second. Let's just take a step back. Let's look at, okay, what is life and why am I really truly doing this? Is it to put more wear and tear on my body, but is it to really, again, is it to climb the peak, or what is it? Is this just what I know? And this is who I am, and I've learned this at a young age, that I've always been that driver, right? And I'm talking about, both of us, right? Like that grind, let's go. Maybe it's not about the grind. Maybe it's about taking that step back after doing the grind and saying, okay, hey, I've left a legacy. What is next to help empower others to create their own legacy? Who knows?
Yeah, well, that's exactly that's the definition I'm looking at. And what's really kind of helped me is being a middle school wrestling coach, because I look at these young men and women, and and at this time in their life they have no clue what they're doing. And the more I look at it, maybe they might be state champions, but wrestling ends after high school. There's very few people that wrestle after high school. And so I have to look at myself as a coach. What am I actually training them for? And I've come to the realization wrestling it's not about, what you're going to do for the rest of your life. It's how you're going to face the rest of your life. And like you said, taking those self-inventories, I think is very important. Not that you're giving up on things that you did before, but that mark's going to change. And as long as you know where that mark is, as long as you're striving to be better in whatever area that is, that's okay. I don't think our goal has to be, to to do the best race. Obviously, it's still on my bucket list. I'm still looking towards that mark. But at the same time, you're right. My body's not going to be able to last forever. And what's the next thing I can do? Where is my life going to have the most meaning? And I love my kids, so I'll
Absolutely.
focus on them too.
Well, it's all about redefining what those goals are. So we're going to go back into another quick break here, Kacey. But when we come back, I want individuals to know what you're currently doing with your speaking events, and then also to motivate individuals. I want you to leave them with a message today, because right now, in a world where we're at with a lot of chaos, right? There's a lot of uncertainty where we're absorbing energy left, right, up, down, all around. How can individuals really take that leap of faith, step forward and embody who they are as an individual and step into their warrior self? Kacey, let's talk about what you are currently doing right now. I know one of the key things is motivational speaker, and clearly your story resonates with a lot of individuals on rising, right? Literally rising from whatever is going on within your life. Where have you been doing your speaking events? And, the key thing is I want you to leave individuals with so much motivation, which you already have. But right now is the time where it's sharing and spreading that light.
Oh, well, I've been all over the place. Obviously, like all of us, COVID kind of shut down what I was able to do, and it's been a really interesting journey, kind of building it back and reaching out and finding the people that really need this message. In fact, right now, the reason I'm in my car is I'm coming back from an event in Idaho where I was able to, well, one, talk to the wrestlers, which is always great, but also talk to a group of young people. And I absolutely love talking to the youth of today, because they're getting so many messages from so many different places. And, COVID affected them, really strongly as well. And so I think the message of rising up, understanding, life isn't just about, what we see on social media. It's not about, going viral. It's not about, these perfect lifestyles. Talking to these kids, it is about learning. It's about, it's about failure. If I can teach anything to not only kids, but to everybody, that in our lives, failure is a big part of who we are. When I talk to my wrestlers, I say it's not a loss. You either win or you learn. And that's the exact same way in life. We look around and we either win or learn. So I've really enjoyed going into schools recently post COVID, and helping these kids understand that life is something different than they were taught. Life is about failure. Life is about learning. Life is about learning and developing grit. And it's pretty awesome to see that. And it's pretty awesome when I hear those stories of hope of people whose lives were just not going in the right direction. And they figured out, that there was a lot more to their life than what they were doing.
I love the fact that you spoke about social media. We speak about that a lot. And I think right now individuals are basing emotions, their feels, off of hearts, likes, thumbs up, who all liked my image, who all liked my video, so on and so forth, where they're not going deeper, right? So it's all superficial. It's not, some of the videos, let's be honest, are real life, all right? I'm going to throw that out there. But the gratification that individuals are taking and the emotions that they're basing off of those things is very dangerous, especially if you look at the fact of, let's just say, cyber attacks happen. We already had impacts in regards to Facebook. I don't know if Instagram was impacted X amount of time ago, but if all of that goes down and that is their only sense of feel is who is liking my stuff, or they're like, okay, what's next to post, all these different components, they're in trouble. Their mental health really is in trouble. So the fact of speaking about the social media, influence, or, it's not about going viral. Why aren't we teaching children to be good human beings and being community builders, and then teaching them life skills where it comes down to, okay, what are great coping strategies? What are free strategies, instead of instantly going to the phone for looking like, okay, well, I'm upset. Boom. I'm going to go to a video. I'm going to go to TikTok, right? We've really lost the sense of holistic approach of getting out in nature as well.
Well, I love the analogy of us as a piece of iron, a piece of raw iron. And I don't know if you've ever watched Forged in Fire, but you see these master swordsmiths, the first thing they do with that iron is they put it in the fire until, it starts to melt, until it breaks down a little bit, and that's exactly like us in our lives. We all come from a really good piece of iron, but it's not until we're kind of broken down, it's not until we're put under that strain of that fire that we're ready to change. And then of course comes the hammer of experience. Well, if we're all going to have adversity, but if then we don't back out with experience and start living our lives and start trying to figure it out and understand, we're not going to be able to hold up to the stress. So those challenges, like I forget who said it, but they said obstacles do not block the path, they are the path. So when we face these challenges in life, I hope we can understand they're not meant to break us. They're not meant to depress us. They're there to actually build us up. They're there to strengthen us and make us better than we were before.
I love that.
And so when those challenges come, whether they be a Spartan race or whether they be my kid deciding he needs to trash the kitchen at 4 a.m., whatever those challenges may be in life, understand that it's all part of experience and making us better people. And I think when we can then pass on that hope and experience to the next generation, to our coworkers, to those hands that hang down, I really think that's when our lives can truly start having meaning, is when we're able to turn around and help someone else in need.
You made a couple statements in there, and the one thing is what I took away from that was never settle. We get into this complacent mindset of just sitting in this space like this is what life is. The reality is life is what you make of it. So if you want something more, if you want to overcome obstacles, or you can sit in front of that rock, stare at it all you want, but the rock is still going to be a rock, right? So either A, you work through that rock, you go around, you jump over the rock, you just make sure that you keep moving. And life is going to knock you down. You're going to have many life ambushes. But the key thing is to understand is growth comes with every single one of them. Now, Kacey, how can individuals find and learn more about you to connect?
Oh, well, it's pretty right there in the name, Rise Up with Kacey. I made it simple. I'm doing a bunch of stuff on TikTok, Instagram. Some of the more meaningful, more straight up motivational, you can check out my website. I even have a book out there, which was kind of fun talking about it this weekend. Had some people that had read it. So if you're wanting to hear more, just check out Rise Up with Kacey, and it's all there.
I love it. Kacey, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your fight. So for individuals that are looking for Kacey, again, it's Rise Up with Kacey, an amazing man with clearly, as you can tell, he's got one heck of a mindset. So if you are looking to build your mindset, let's get ready to do the work and define the fight together, one step at a time. So thanks for joining us. Until next Monday, get out there and define the fight.